All right. This is my friend Ryan.
What's up?
He's gonna film, and my name is Savi. And today we're gonna be doing a history of the skateboard. So as you can see, I have my skateboard collection here, which includes all my old school skateboards, none of my new skateboards, and we're gonna be going through the history all the way back, actually starting in Polynesia. So this will be part one of the video. Part two will be my paper, and part three will be the newest evolution of the skateboard. And I'll give you a little sneak preview of that at the end of this video. But for right now, I guess we'll start with the history. And the history actually is really cool of the skateboard. It actually is derived from surfing, and surfing is actually derived from boats that they used in Polynesia. So you could actually technically argue that skateboarding evolved from a tree, which is very cool because skateboarding has always had a natural influence to it. Now, I'm pretty sure it's Polynesia. I did the paper 8 years ago, but I'm going to be doing this all off the top of my head. Polynesia, I believe they actually had paddle boats and moved to Hawaii. They were kind of like a migrant sea nation, and so they would follow fish where they migrated, and apparently they ended up in Hawaii, where these boats that were kind of pontoon boats turned more into kayaks, and from those kayaks kind of turned into longboard surfboards that are traditional Hawaiian surfboards that are made out of long, thick pieces of hardwood. Now, the important thing about Hawaii is that it was annexed into America in 1938, and with that kind of brought Hawaii into the mainstream surfing light. So surfing became very big in the early 60s, and it kind of encapsulated everything about the Californian culture over there, and that's a whole other thing in itself. But essentially, these surfers in California, it was rumored that one day the waves were just super flat, and they wanted to have some fun and rip around the streets on these huge hills that were the coastal hills of LA, etc. Now, the sport started off being called sidewalk surfing, and it's very cool because a lot of the surf culture moved into the skater culture, and they were almost one and the same. Now, let me give you a great example of what these kids were doing that day, which they decided to make themselves a skateboard. Now, we'll see here, these are actually roller skates. These would have been their parents, their sisters' roller skates. We actually have 3 sets. So, this is actually a really old pair. And my favorite thing in here, actually get a little closer, I don't know if the shade will allow us, but this is a great example of a handmade board. A lot of the times they were using the fronts to dressers and stuff, and just hand cutting them. A lot of time they were asymmetric, just handwork. This one's a great example of the customization that the kids put on it. Beverly has flowers and strawberries and mushrooms, and just a really cool piece of the 60s. And you can actually see the way these are 2 parts. They would just cut them in half, and these are very similar, you can see. So that's one of the first examples of the skateboards. They did not skate very well. They had metal wheels that were very slippery on most surfaces. The bearings weren't that great, so they didn't roll that well. But a lot of people were just using them with their bare feet, and just doing a lot of spins. And eventually they got to the banks of some schools and started surfing the banks, kind of like waves, which was another similarity to surfing. Now, as you can see in these 2 boards, they're a very simple shape, just like most surfboards back then. You can see I bought this one for $15 on eBay. These are great collector items, but these were handmade. But if you compare these handmade ones to some of the earliest boards of the time, they weren't that much different. So this actually has his initials stabbed into it, BW, which is pretty cool. And this is Hawaiian Surf And there's a picture of a guy hanging 10, and this says Union Hardware Roller Skates. MFG by Metal Mass Co. Inc. Philly, PA. So that's actually cool. This one's based off in Philadelphia. This one's got his eye stabbed out too. That's pretty funny. But just like the kind of, there's a lot of history in each one of these pieces of wood. Now, I guess this is kind of a classic board shape, and this is something that they would do where they would take a second piece of wood, kind of angle it down, and this is actually kind of like a later style because the boards at first were completely flat. So I guess we'll get back to those. But this is actually a board I made. Same with this one. This kind of has a surfboard tail, and I made this with the same exact techniques as they did back then. And then this is another one. This one is actually pine, and this is actually 2 pieces of wood. It's kind of hard to tell maybe on camera, but sanded that down, and it's got a slight little bevel to it. Zephyr was one of the first skate shops to sponsor all the local skateboard surfers. This got a nice little beveled edge. I don't know if you want to feel that, Finny, but it's a really nice sand job on that. So looks good. Historically accurate, but not real. And the pine's nice and light. Now, these two, this is a roller derby skateboard. So this would have been late 60s when skateboards were kind of a pop fad item. So kind of like the hula hoop or the slinky or the yo-yo. And so this was one of the first mass-produced boards with a very recognizable logo, in my opinion. Unlike this one, which maybe came before or after, but this is Flying Ace Road Surfer and Lancaster, PA. That's pretty cool. It does kind of have a PA look to it too. It's got like a Native American Indian with like bird with like lightning for feet. So that's pretty sweet for an old school board to have kind of cool graphics like that. It's very what's up. Now, rusted wheels, but par for the course. These things have been kind of sitting in sheds, and there's the perfect example of a asymmetric cut on the top, and that I thought was a production board. So even in production, you can tell that these things were kind of just churned out as child's toys. Competitions weren't really in effect yet until the early 70s, in which they started getting into these boards over here. Now, these boards all kind of are chunked together in the 80s. I don't even know where these 2 wooden ones stand. This has again that same technique on the tail. How do you say that, Vinny?
Makahaya.
Yeah,
Makahaya.
that's a current. These skateboards are still around, so that's pretty cool. I was wondering if this was handmade or not.
It says their originator on it, I believe.
Yeah, that's very cool, and some original stickers. And so this one definitely looks handmade, or at least hand-laid grip tape with no name. It seems to have maybe like some kind of price tag on, or like item tag number on it. I think this was also factory made. This has a slight bend to it using the same technique. I was wondering if they were steam bent, this one, but once again, they just did that 2-piece of wood technique, which is pretty cool. Now, in these competitions, this is definitely a kid one. You can tell because the trucks are plastic. But this says Tomcat. My name's Tom. So, had to get it for the collection. But these guys were a great example of what they would have been skating in the mid 80s, I guess. This is Veraflex, and it's got a little cross hatch wicker pattern to the top, I guess, to add grip. They weren't thinking grip tape yet, I guess. And this is just a single mold with these ribs, these plastic ribs. They were doing the molds themselves a lot of the time, but then bigger companies kind of bought the smaller ones out, and that's a whole thing where how the skateboard industry kind of got commercialized, which was great and not great at the same time, because they were battling with these competitions. They were getting more and more air, and people were getting hurt, and more kids were trying to emulate the professionals and getting hurt. So in the 70s, or actually in the 80s, there's kind of a backlash, and skateboarding is too extreme, it's too dangerous, and so that kind of cancels that out a little bit. You can see here, this wheel's bearing is shot, but just a different underneath structure to prevent bending. This one's by Green Tech. And Green Tech, like, even that's a great example. This one might actually be from the 70s. Even the wheels say Green Tech. And these are polyurethane, which was another advancement that added a lot of grip to the wheels. But yeah, you can see here just by the name, the Green Tech, a lot of skateboarders were very naturalistic, and even from the start. Now, this one is probably a further developed one, another one by Makana USA, however you would say that. And you'll see boards on the boardwalk today that are very reminiscent of this design. It's pretty cheap, it's just a bunch of thick plastic, and you don't have to do any laminating. This is the Pro IV, so 4, and it's got a cool little image of maybe even a guy surfing here. It looks kind of like snowboarding or skiing, but I'm pretty sure that's surfing. So that's showing you how much surfing was derived still after 10-20 years. It was still connected to skateboarding. Now over here, these are pretty fun ones. These, what I was talking about with the commercialism and it being kind of a good thing, kind of a bad thing. Nash was this is a little dusty, I do apologize. This was a skateboard magazine company, and so this must have been put out by them. Tough Top. So I guess this is a grip tape that didn't wear off back in the day. Their glues probably weren't as good for grip tape. And it says here Park, which was a cool thing because a lot of people were skating flat ground and then like slightly vert. But I guess parks were starting to become a thing, and that led into more bowls, and especially with the drought in California, that emptied up all the swimming pools of water, and so they had these cool, very sharp waves that were concrete to get up on. This is another board. This is my flame board, and I turned this. This was my Bart Simpson Halloween costume board. Because Bart Simpson rode a board very similar to this, shallow tail, flat top, and definitely something cowabunga cool style. Some red hot flames. So this is actually a mystery to me. There's no real markings on this except for the G-Max Trax GT, and actually, I don't know if I searched that yet or not. I got this board a while ago, and it's one of my favorites. I barely ride this thing, even though it's solid metal. It's steel, stainless steel actually, and I believe it was made in America. So I'm gonna put that around like late 80s, and that's a really high quality board for the late 80s. It's like you saw, these other ones were just from the magazines, and I guess the next 3 are examples of just kind of cheaper quality boards, but they're still pretty cool, and they're in my collection for a certain reason. These guys are kind of big and goofy to skate, and kind of fun because of that. These guys have what they call grind rails, so that's so your image doesn't get wrecked while you're doing your grinds. This is Thrasher, which was another skateboard magazine, and you can see that these have went from metal to urethane to now plastic, which actually makes it a lot more slippery, especially on blacktop. You can see the blacktop starts coating it, makes it a lot higher slip coefficient. Now, here are 2 other boards. This one, very 80s in color. Looks like this actually has some good wheels on it, but you can see that they included this piece to help you rock into a transition or a half pipe better. So they're starting to think about vert in the 80s. You can see that this is actually scarred up and used heavily. So this was a board that someone actually used, not just something from Walmart and a decoration. You know, someone actually probably spent hours a day on this. And it's got a nice little nose guard too, and a nice huge tail grinder. And that's, I guess, how people used to stop. But now that just gives you what they call razor tail and thins out the tail, because tails are used heavily now to create tricks. So this is a bit big and bulky, but it did the job back then. This is another example. This is actually a pretty clean one. I actually took a lot of the wrapping off this, so this is not, I think this is actually a 90s board, not very used, but this is pretty cool. On this, it's got a handle right here, which I'll get to something similar in a second. It's also got these little cool, I guess, plastic things that might make grinding better on coping. And finishing up here, we'll just look at two new style boards. Now this is a 7.75, something that I would ride. I'm about 150 pounds. This is same exact technology into it, but you can see the board's a little bit bigger. This is a, what, an 8.5?
8.3.
8.3 inches wide is what we're talking about here. And this is Ryan Finney's board, and Ryan's a specialist at vert. I'm a specialist at street. So I guess let's kind of pick apart the differences of how our boards are set up. You'll see on street boards, this is what I'm talking about with the razor tail. That tail's getting eaten up by that street a lot. It's popping. That's gonna be, I'll use this side, but that's gonna be the point of contact a lot of times to start a lot of your tricks. Also on street boards, you'll see grind marks all over, whereas vert, you'll see them in more specific spots. Like here, this is from resting on a coping. Now, let's see. See how the tail's kind of more intact? Usually boards like this are staying out of park and not on really abrasive surfaces, just like street skaters would kind of run into. It's got a nice wide wheelbase, which helps for stability in balancing while carving these huge vert ramps. Now, I guess I'll kind of reveal, I'm also a designer as well as an artist and a philanthropist and entrepreneur and all this, but one of the things I designed in my freshman year of college was actually sleeping, and I had a drill right on my board, and as I was falling asleep I got this idea that why not take the hole saw that was sitting on my board and put two holes in it. Now these aren't just any two holes, these are specifically placed in the strongest parts of the board. So the traditional breaking points, there's 5. 1 in the center, 1 on each of the trucks, and almost never does it snap within this tail range, in the middle of the tail. So that's how I knew I could remove that there. Not reducing the structural integrity of the traditional breaking points, but I could remove some weight from the outside of the board, bringing the center of the mass inwards, therefore creating the board to flip faster 2 out of 3 axes. Now, in addition to that, it is also really great for ergonomics. So you can use it if you're tired, you can walk upstairs with it, or say if you twist your ankle, you can use it kind of as a crutch. And it's also very handy for hanging on coat hooks, sometimes cup holders, bottle holders, and it's just aesthetically interesting, conversational starter, and you know, casts a nice shadow. And this is the newest evolution of skateboard. I thought of this, like I said, 8 years ago. I've been kind of sitting on this and wanted to get a provisional patent and make some money on it, but it's time just to, you know, share what works. And this is also easily replicable. You can actually use it on any board with mostly any skate technology in it. Just get a hole saw, center it up, punch it up. You can sand the edges. And what I also like to do, another quick tip, is to take wood glue and coat the nose and especially the tail of my boards so they don't wear out like this one's starting to. So again, my name's Sanvi, and thanks a lot for watching Just Ninja TV.